I'm Annette Combs-Skelton. I'm the director here, and so delighted to have all of you in attendance. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have such distinguished guests at MOCA GA this evening. Welcome to all of you. I'm honored, all of you on the panel as well. I'm also very honored that Sheila chose to do this body of work for her Working Artist Project. And she was the winner in 2014-15, and she worked on this work for a full year, and then presented it here in this exhibition. Our Working Artist Project is a major program at MOCA GA. Each year, we honor 3 artists with a stipend, a studio apprentice. Where's Terrell? Where is he? There he is, with Sheila's apprentice. And Keisha was also right there beside Sheila through a lot of this program. I'm not going to talk very much. I'm going to forego the usual, the artist did this and these exhibitions, because we want to hear from the panel, and then we want to hear questions and answers from the audience and from the elders.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out, and I'm not going to talk a lot because it's about the voices of the young people, and we're going to have a dialogue in here. I started this project actually back in back in 2013, where I was looking at young people. I had a body of work called Young Americans, and they are the biggest generation in history, Generation Y. And I gave them a flag, and I wanted to know what they thought about the country. They did whatever they want with it. But as that body of work developed, I started thinking about the young people that make change in our history. And I started looking at the young people in the civil rights movement, because they changed the face of the nation. So I met Mr. Charles Black, raise your hand. And from there, I met Mr. Lonnie King. And they were the two that were very instrumental with me of getting the young people back then, which you guys, I don't want to say elders, with that. And I started a body of work called 1960 Who, because I wanted to reach back to show the unknown civil rights leaders. It doesn't just take one person to lead, but it takes all of us and all of our different working parts. So I launched the project on walls here in Atlanta, where they were 12 feet high, 10 feet high, to honor Mr. King, Mr. Black, and the other members. From that time on, I actually was looking at the youth now, and that's how I came up with 1960 Now, because I feel that there's a big generational gap. It's always a generational gap, but there is a big generational gap when it comes to history and learning our history, because I learned so much from Mr. Black and Mr. King, and I would go home to my mom, because she's around about their age, and I told her, I said, Mom, why didn't you talk to us about the civil rights movement? I'm an Army brat, number one. She said, because I didn't want you to hate white people. So I think that generation didn't really talk to us about the movement. And I think that's where the disconnect is with Generation Y, even with Generation X. And so I'm trying to create a dialogue among us to speak and talk. And this is what you see on the walls, on the floors, the video. This is my experience, where I've been on the ground with all of them. And in order for you to understand what's really going on, you have to be on the ground. You can't look at media because they filter things out. I mean, my first experience were here when Aurielle and them shut down Martin Luther King Parade the first year. You guys didn't hear about that on TV, did you? It was called Reclaim Martin Luther King Day. And from there, I was doing my travels to Ferguson, and I went to the aftermath. And when I went to those protests, there was tension in the air. And Baltimore was the longest place that I've been, and that's where I met Kwame Rose. I was up there for 6 weeks. And I saw the pain, I saw the hurt, I saw the anger, I saw the love, and I saw the passion. And you can really get emotional behind all of this. And with this exhibit, we're in a museum. I didn't want it to be a regular thing. I wanted everybody to feel something when they walk in here. And that's why you see the images on the floor. It may be uncomfortable to you, but this whole year has been very uncomfortable for everybody, and it's about disruption. So from there, I'm gonna bring it over to Lakeisha because she's been with me on the ground. She came up with the Bring It 1960 Now campaign that I had on Instagram, and she was really instrumental in producing the video that you guys see on the wall. It's my video footage of me being on the ground, and we worked together with that. Lakeisha.
Thanks, Sheila. Thank you. It's an honor to be here with this panel. I'm Keisha, also known as Keish, and I'm your moderator here this afternoon. If you are hosting this evening's talk, I think it's an important dialogue. So if you'd like to share it, the hashtag this evening is 1960 Now Talk. And you can make sure that people kind of hear what's going on. Is there reverb? Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. All right. So we're going to start just introducing ourselves and telling you about our work and how we are connected with Sheila. She's already kind of told you. But my work is, as a cultural producer, is creating intersections where academia and pop culture and millennials can come in the same space and have a conversation. We're periscoping this evening, so if you're on your phone and you want to tune into that, we know you're paying attention. And so it's live, and we have some of our global community with us. But the way that I've known Sheila's known me all my life. But we started working on these projects since 1960 and thinking about taking the work out of the museums into the streets to reach the people. And it was nice, it was very successful. And then it turned into something more than that. It turned because the hashtag didn't stop. And so we wanted to collect history. We wanted to collect the history that would bridge gaps. So that's how I got connected to the work. And we'll just pass it to Faron.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Faron Manuel. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a graduate of Clark Atlanta University, and while in my senior year, I served the student body as undergraduate SGA president. And during that period, I really wanted to get involved, with all of these, black people being killed legally on camera. I couldn't just stand idly by and do nothing. So, I looked at my position in the world, and I just kind of employed, that position in order to make a constructive change. So something that we started to do with the students was, different things like having legal forums to teach our students basic police interaction. We would bring in, different speakers to talk to the students and implement different programs and things. And I would also go to the protests, and later I would be called upon to do different news interviews and things. And I got a chance to see where Sheila's work fitted into all of these things that are going on. Some of the false or skewed narratives that would be put out in mainstream news versus things that bloggers would put out and people that were actually, like Sheila said, on the ground in the protests. And I kind of got to see the different holes in the reporting, which is why I think perception changing work like this is so important. And with the rise of the internet, you have people that have the opportunity to give additional reporting and to give a more broader view of the things that are going on. So that's pretty much how I got connected to the work.
Hello. My name is Crystal Monds. I am an artist and a yoga instructor. I became connected in a different way to live stream and get all the details that you're not going to see on the news. So we can have our own perspective out there so people can see it. It's not just raw, it's just raw. So coming from a yogi kind of background, that's where I started to do more of the healing work in Atlanta. So holding healing salons and holding healing stations at protests, just for folks that are involved to kind of come back, sit down, when they have their kids, come bring them over, get a drink of water, and kind of recenter, so that we can keep moving forward and retain our strength in that way. I became connected with this. I've been following Sheila's work for a while, and you actually contacted me for everything. But yeah, so of course, after doing this work, it all kind of just fell into place, and I just went ahead and got on board.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. My name is Yoehzer Ben Yeeftank. I'm an undocumented student here in Atlanta. So I'm a part of Freedom University, which is an underground freedom school based here in Atlanta, which works to give undocumented students access to higher education. Where they're here in Georgia, we're currently banned from the top 5 universities in the state. And Freedom University really works to build intergenerational and interracial connections. So we actually get a lot of inspiration from student movements of the past, particularly SNCC, Atlanta Student Movement, Freedom Summer 1964. And we work with a lot of the veterans that are still here in Atlanta, Charles Black. And Lonnie King actually came to one of our actions, and Sheila as well came to one of our actions this past January, where we held an integrated classroom at UGA with documented and undocumented students, knowingly for the first time in history. And Sheila actually, well, I became connected with this work. I met Sheila actually, she came to one of our class. We had a documentary photography class, and she actually guest lectured at it. And she came, as I said, to our action. And yeah, she's interested in our movement, and I think it has a lot of connections. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Peace and love. My name is Yoehzer Ben Yeeftank. Hashtag is bigger than you. And before I was a movement worker, I was a spoken word artist, still am. And I create events where you blend art and create empathy, where people can have fertile ground for internal and social change. First, I have to thank Sheila for inviting me into this work, because she chased me down. She chased me down across protests. She said, I have to get you have to be a part of this. And she had asked me to look at it months and months before, but if Aurielle could attest to anything about me, is that I did not stop moving for at least a year, from August 14th. And so when she finally got me here, I just felt so humbled to be asked to be a part of this and to be connected to this great work, which connects 1960 to now and beyond. Continuous, I like to say that our liberation movement is a continuous chain. It's never been this movement of 2014 to 15. It's never been 1960. Black people have never stopped struggling for liberation at any point in all of history. So that's how I got connected. She chased me down and invited me here. And if I might cry about it, because this space is probably the first space where I was made to stop and recollect exactly what has happened. And I'm very appreciative for her creating it through art, because as an artist, it hit me very viscerally. As I sat, she took my photo. There was an intensity that came from the ancestors that I didn't know where it came from. And it's really a special work. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
So good evening, everyone. How are you all doing? All right. So my name is Kwame Rose. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. And so I won't say. I mean, the way I got involved in the movement. So I always say that I was active way before I was an activist. So I always recognized the fact that I was a black male in America. My father always raised me to know that I had it 10 times as hard as anybody else, just because of the fact that my skin is black. So, I mean, I watched on TV, like, the death of Trayvon Martin, which actually was, like, the start of the movement, right? When Trayvon got killed by George Zimmerman, it was the first time my generation got to see, like, kind of on the forefront of that, wait a minute, we're dying, and that people are actually engaged in changing that. And then Mike Brown died a short while later. But it wasn't until Freddie Gray died. So I always say the death of Freddie Gray gave me a purpose for my life. And so I realized that it was closer than home. It was more than just being on the TV screen, it was being home. And I guess the moment that kind of threw me into the movement, I was at work, and it was that Monday. So I worked at a hotel. I was a bellman at a hotel, and I was in the back. So CNN was reporting that Baltimore was going under siege by riots. And I had a white coworker walk in the back, and they were reporting on TV that, you know, police officers were injured. And so she yells out, "Oh my gosh, this is terrible. Did anybody die?" And I said, "Yeah, that's kind of the reason for all of this." And she said, "No, I'm talking about police officers." And so I said, "Yeah, but the police officers are the ones who are the problem." And so I got told not to bring that into work. So so that kind of threw me. So Baltimore, the protests in Baltimore, they weren't organized by organizers. Like the thousands of people you saw were literally thousands of like poor black people that walked to the protest just out of the fact that we've all been victims of police brutality in Baltimore City. I got robbed by the police last August, and like literally I was on a flight to Arizona last week. And I had just got, it was a year and a half later, and I just got the complaint form that I filed back with Internal Affairs a year and a half later. So it like kind of shows the corruption, right? Baltimore City is a predominantly black city, 63% of the population, 79% of the police force is white, commutes to Baltimore City to work, and only 11% of the police are black and live in Baltimore City and from Baltimore City, right? So Baltimore's a major American city, a major black American city, but it kind of displayed on national TV that it doesn't take white people to practice white supremacy. And so I kind of got involved with Sheila, and I met Keisha through Devin Allen, who was the guy with the bush. If you all are familiar with the Baltimore protest and you see the Time magazine cover that says 1960 splashed out 2015, Devin was the one who shot that. And so Devin's kind of been like my big brother, because I'm 21, so this is the year I graduated college. So Devin's kind of been my big brother, and he introduced me to Sheila and Keisha at his art exhibit down in Baltimore. And you know, since then, I think these spaces are very important because we don't get to talk about these spaces. Like young black bodies are discredited so much and undervalued that we don't get to talk, and you don't get to hear the minds of young people who are like actually engaged in making change. So I thank you all for this space, and I hope tonight is a productive conversation.
Thank you.
Hey y'all. Okay, now y'all are in a museum, not a mausoleum. So let's, get some vibes flowing. Hey y'all. Thank you. And I think that energy is really important, so forgive me for enforcing that on y'all. My name is Aurielle, and I am a poet and a spoken word artist and an organizer, activist. I love what Kwame said about being active before activism. I think that's kind of what I've always, without knowing the language, kind of understood about that term. It's such a trigger word, it's like a buzzword, but what does that mean, right? To be an activist. So before the movement kicked off, I was a poet and a spoken word artist, and I left school. I dropped out of college after my freshman year, and I was like, this institution of education doesn't serve me. I'm gonna go build my own. And I created a curriculum called Speak Black, and I did it at a couple of local schools. I was put on by a couple of people, and then word of mouth is usually what keeps an artist's pockets padded, and I was able to travel around the country and teach at Harvard and NYU and UCLA and a couple different schools, kind of giving young Black academic students tools to talk about their lived experiences and use hip hop and spoken word as a vehicle for social justice word. And so then when Michael Brown was killed back in August of 2014, I looked up and I was like, oh, this is what we've been talking about. Like this whole like systemic racism thing is like real, and it's tangible, and it's like freaking like in our like real life experiences right now. And so we hit the streets back then, and just like in Baltimore, before there was any like organization, before there was a hashtag, which is the organization that I helped to found. It was, you know, just us hitting the streets and using Twitter and Facebook to gather the multitudes in the streets. So there were 5,000 of us at the CNN Center last August. And we gathered there because CNN wasn't telling the story right. They weren't talking about the truth of why young Blacks hit the streets in Ferguson. And we knew the truth because we were a part of that lived experience of understanding how anti-Blackness shows up in real time in our lives. So I was, you know, been doing that work for the past year, been on the ground and in the streets and building community using art and all that good stuff, and was connected with Sheila by Julian. Julian actually connected us, a brilliant photographer, who's also a student and a comrade of mine. Brought us together. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Five core questions that kind of represent the framework to this body of work, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. So I'm going to start because the first thing that you saw in the video installation was the idea about the civil rights movement. And King said that the civil rights movement is not dead. But people think that it kind of died somewhere. He said we're in the new phase of the movement. He describes it, the first 12 years as a struggle to end legal segregation and the humiliation surrounding legal segregation. He goes on to say, now we are seeking genuine equality as we are dealing with hard economic and social issues, which are much more difficult. So to the panel, what does it mean to reclaim MLK when you think about genuine equality as it relates to your work?
Interesting you say reclaim MLK. Our first message into that was to reclaim one of our leaders who 30 years, 40 years after he was murdered, was turned into a figurehead that didn't represent anything having to do with what he wanted. So, you know, one of the first things that we think about when we think about reclaiming MLK is that we reclaim him as a father and an ancestor, and really want to reclaim the intensity and the passion behind his work. That's first. And the second thing that I think comes to mind when we're discussing reclaiming our true equality is human dignity is something that is almost at the basis of every interaction. It's whether or not I respect you enough to give you the basics of what I know that I need as a human being. Human beings desire to be treated as you treat one another. Water is free. We expect a certain amount of generosity. We expect a certain amount of reciprocity. We expect you not to hit me in the face when I walk in the door. We expect you to respect our children. So the basis of human dignity is things that everyone deserves, and I think that's what it means. It's illegal to treat us that way. But now, how do we create a culture where the law is enforced? Because the law has never been enforced where it regards the dignity of our people.
So, as it relates to like reclaiming the dream, so what I'll say is that like the civil rights movement, like I've been very critical of like the older generation and the fact that, you know, it's our time for young people to be the face of the movement, and kind of feel like the older generation to kind of step out of the way. But what I will say is that the civil rights movement, it wasn't that they didn't accomplish anything. They accomplished their dream of like desegregation and the Voting Rights Act and things of that nature, right? It's just the fact that when we got desegregation, we never, as a country, as a movement, as a people, we never moved into a movement to force integration. So even till this day, there is no such thing as integration. Baltimore City, I went to the third largest high school and it was 99% black. When I went to a white school, it was like brand new textbooks, but at the black schools, you can't even drink out of the water fountain because of lead in the water pipes, right? So when I think of the movement now, we don't have a Dr. King figure. There's no Malcolm X figure. There's literally no tangible person for the government to kill if the movement dies, or the movement gets co-opted to be just credited to one person. The power of this movement now is that we have social media, and literally, when you say reclaim Dr. King, I think of reclaiming the narrative, right, and what Dr. King really wanted. Because Dr. King said in 1968 to Harry Belafonte, I fear I've integrated my people into a burning house, and that everything we lost through, and everything we had through segregation, like a sense of communalism, a sense of taking care of each other, a sense of protecting ourselves from white spaces and white supremacy, we lost it when we got this idea of integration. And really what desegregation was just a few blacks were allowed into white spaces, which basically allowed white people to be, to say, well, I have one black friend. And so when I think of like reclaiming Dr. King, I think of reclaiming the narrative and telling our story on social media, right? So like none of this movement would be possible. National media isn't covering the fact that right now in Minnesota, the National Guard has been like sent out because Minnesota police shot a black man in his head while he was handcuffed last week. And so the protesters had went to the precinct and occupied the precinct, and they like even a congressman's son was peacefully protesting last night, and the police put up a rifle at him, and there's a picture that's gone viral of that. So I think it's like reclaiming the narrative of today and figuring out that the ancestors of the civil rights movement they paved the road for our generation to lay the bricks for future generations to have an easier walk to freedom.
That is a perfect statement to go right to the next question. And so I want some of you that have that on your mind to maybe respond to this. So we know digital media is powerful in terms of the perspectives of the people and narratives. Before people heard or saw the organizers of Black Lives Matter, the hashtag was trending. And this morning I searched the hashtag under Google's search engine, and 12 million entries in 0.50 seconds came up. But then I went and I said, well, let me enter all lives matters hashtag. And 159 million entries in 0.36 seconds show up. So there are many who criticize the Black Lives Matter movement, suggesting that the phrase suggests that nobody else's life matters, down to the point that our president addressed it and said that what they're suggesting was there is a specific problem that is happening in the African American community that is not happening in other communities. So, to the panel, as we consider the history of black bodies in the country, coming in as a commodity from slavery, and now here we are in a time of massive incarceration and corporations owning prisons. What are your views of the Black Lives Matter movement?
Since graduating college, I started working as a writer for Black Art in America, and prior to that, I had a piece published in The Nation, and I had done work with different, news outlets, and through those experiences, I got an up and close look at a glimpse at how media does in shaping the narrative and creating the conversation amongst the average everyday person. So a lot of the people you come across in the streets and you want to dialogue about some of these issues with, or they're just on everybody's tongue. A lot of these people are just parroting the news outlets that they watch. So you have certain people parroting Fox News. So you bring up, did you see Eric Garner get choked to death on film legally? And they'll say, but what about black on black crime? And this is a common slogan thrown out by different talking heads on certain conservative news outlets. So you have people parroting these things, and with social media, it's enabled the general people to put their own perspectives out there and challenge those popular narratives on a broad basis. So, you know, like you can shoot out a couple of memes that some of them kind of make it comical to challenge some of these topics, but at the same time, it's very insightful. And as I keep saying, it's perception changing. And I think that's a large part of the problem that we have in this country. And in a lot of countries around the world, a lot of things are being told from the perspective of like the dominant white society. So like as a white person, the way you see the world is the way it's going to be presented in the news and the movies and the curriculum. And having social media allows us to get everybody's perspective on a certain topic. And that's how you're going to get the truth, by letting everybody speak, because the truth holds weight and it's going to float to the top every time. And as far as Black Lives Matter, it became a popular, you know, slogan or a popular hashtag. And most people on the news talk about it from an organizational standpoint, but I would say most Black people look at it as a slogan for, you know, for showing their humanity and letting you know, like, it's not okay to kill us. We are people and we do have emotions. So.
Yeah, so just piggybacking off like the transition to the last question. Like I think that everyone forgets that Martin Luther King died a hated man. Everyone forgets that he, for the 20 years after his death, he was, public enemy number one. He was someone who allowed those uppity Negroes down in the South to, get the audacity to resist the normalcy, right? And in that same vein, we have romanticized the civil rights movement in a way that has done it such injustice, so that we are now, as activists, quote unquote, organizers, or whatever, in the Black Lives Matter movement, held to the impossible standard of this beautiful, passive, peaceful king who always wore a good suit and tie, and that's just not what that movement was about. They shut the streets down. They made politicians red in the face. It was there were arguments. It was not a peaceful interaction. It was not calm and satiated with the crumbs that white supremacy has allowed us over the past couple of years. And so when you look at the Black Lives Matter movement now, you're looking at a gathering of young people from all over the country who believe that resistance has to exist. Resistance must exist outside of the institution in order for us to survive. And I think Audre Lorde said it best, we were never meant to survive. Be very clear, this country was never meant to have Black people and brown people free. That's not what the old white dude sat down and talked about in Pennsylvania. That wasn't it. They created a country that was going to be supported by free labor on the backs of folks of color. And so we were not meant to thwart that system. And we are living in a country that is built upon the idea that Black lives, brown lives, bodies of color are less valuable than white people. And that's just, that's statistically and historically accurate. And so the Black Lives Matter movement, both as a hashtag, both as a rallying cry, the war cry, and as organizations and this decentralized, leaderful network of radical organizers, is a resistance against a system that is consistently trying to kill us. And when we hit the streets and when we're shutting stuff down, it's because we know that the other option is to sit on our hands and wait to die.
That's a good leadway into my
Can
next
I
question.
say one thing?
Quick, yeah.
So, even the fact, Black Lives Matter is for many, for outsiders, it's an organization, right? But, literally, the power of social media made it the #1 trending hashtag for a large part of the last year and a half. And for those of us who believe Black Lives Matter, I'm not a part of Black Lives Matter, the organization or the movement necessarily, but I'm a believer that my Black life matters, and so do the lives that look just like me. When we allow outsiders, that's the thing. So when we say we have to make the distinguishing of whether or not we're part of the organization, most outsiders, most white people don't know the difference between Don Lemon and Mark Lamont Hill. So even when you have people on TV, Fox News bring Kwame X on to be the oppositional voice. Most CNN brings Mark Lamont Hill on there to put sense into white people. Yet at the same time, we phenomenize Black intellectuals and kind of group them in the same, because we don't expect Black people to be independent thinkers.
Thank you. So I'm going to cut what we're doing here, trying to show I have one last question, and I'd like to respond because you haven't spoken. dialogue. So yesterday, students across the nation stood in solidarity with the University of Missouri using the hashtag Student Blackout. In Atlanta, Georgia, members of the ACU, Georgia State, Emory, Georgia Tech shut down Peachtree Street. This morning, activist DeRay tweeted a link, the demands.org, detailing the list of demands by each university that stood in solidarity around the country, including Yale and Princeton. A commenter responded. He says, "It's upsetting to see the similarities proving a systematic problem. As the majority of Americans seek educational opportunity, are the list of demands to create change enough? Are there examples of how we can transform oppressive systems and establish new leadership?"
I don't think that any list of demands is ever enough, but it's always a starting point. As far as, I'm just going to speak about the 10%, Mizzou wanted a demand that there be 10% authority figures, administrators, Black in the university. And the backlash, and even people that were good about that, was that no primarily white institution has that, so that they're overstretching, they're asking for too much because that's not a thing that exists in universities that are with white people. And that by itself is saying a lot about where we are and the things that we need and are, should be able to ask for and demand as Black people. And I think they're at like a 2%, 2 to 3%. So with that, it's okay to ask for those things, and it's necessary to make a list of demands. One of the things that, with the things that I've done around direct actions in Atlanta, have all come with lists of demands, because that's one of the important things a lot of people see, just as disrupting things or standing traffic, and having that list of demands is an important part of action always. And asking for small things and large things, it's necessary. The reason that it's seen as not okay is, again, because of the value of our lives. We're not supposed to have the audacity to be able to demand a thing for us that is available to everyone else.
Thank you.
And I agree with Crystal that a list of demands is the first step, and it kind of sets up, I guess, it tells people that like, this is what we're going to work for. So we're basically not going to stop until we do. So, like, I know personally in my movement that I'm involved in, the documentary movement here in Atlanta, like, we tell, people, the Board of Regents, our particular, how that we, like, this is what we want, but that doesn't mean we're just going to be like, here, this is what we want, and then just sit back and wait for them to give it to us. We're not going to do that. We know they're not going to listen to us so every meeting we show up, every time we see them, we tell them, hey, we're still here, and we're still waiting. So yeah, a list of demands is good, but also like continuing student action.
Thank you. So we are going to open this up to the floor. This is a conversation we can have all night. But I want to just give you a few ground rules, if I may. Number one, we must love and respect each other. Okay, that's the rule number one. Please have a question and not a comment. If you have a comment, just use the hashtag, because we'll see it, and it'll live somewhere forever. Let us know who your question is directed to. And last, if you are tuning in from Periscope, is that you, Aaron? If you're tuning in from Periscope, just ask your question in the comment box, and we'll try to take at least one of those. And maybe some of our members, if you directed and tag them, they'll answer you directly. So let's start with the first row. So this is 1960 who? You, sir.
Okay, one thing I want to say, congratulations. The second thing I want to say, what took you so damn long? What took you so long? since 79 until it's 2002, a trademark, line law. You guys were dead. You thought you had it. You wouldn't listen to us, elders. Even my children. Oh, you know, you old time. But thank you for at least putting a foot forward. You know, this is just a microcosm of what we had to go through. And we tried to pass it on, but you young people just didn't care. Didn't want to listen. I see kids walking around with Alabama stuff on. I saw the governor of Alabama stand in the way of 2 black kids. And you catch me in Alabama stuff or Georgia stuff, when all these southern schools had a law, if any football team with any Negro on the opposition team, you will lose your funding from the state. Thank you.
I think this is a question that we get a lot, and it contributes to the schism between the two generations of movement, quote unquote, leaders. The question, well, about time, or where have y'all been? I don't know about my peers on the panel, but when I grew up, there wasn't a conversation about racism. I mean, I grew up for the first 10 years of my life. For the first 10 years of my life, I listened. For the first 10 years of my life, I lived in a upper middle class, 4-bedroom, 2-story home, and we were the only black family. And when Pilot Dog crap was left on our doorstep, and I asked my mom, who would put that there and why? My mother was afraid to talk to me about racism because I went to a school where I was one of the only black girls. And when I moved in with my grandfather after we lost that home because we were black folks who were living on the better part of the city and the same resources to get our family out of the throes of the stock market crash were not extended to us like they were to other families in our neighborhood. My grandfather sat me down and was like, they don't care about you, and they don't want to see you survive. They don't want to see you thrive. But that wasn't a dialogue that was extended to me for the better part of my life, nor was it a dialogue that was supported in our educational institutions, in our churches, the Lord, and in our YMCA after school programs. We were discouraged from engaging in the conversation about race. We were told as children that the conversation about race was dealt with by your generation, sometimes and often by members of your generation. So when we sit down and have this conversation about where were you, we got here on our own. Young people got to this place after watching so many people killed and so many people disenfranchised, and we're often told by people from the other generation that now, after being put in this place, that we're not doing it right. That we haven't, we're not walking like Martin walked. We're not talking how King talked. We ain't sitting with our legs crossed like Rosa was, right? And we have been discouraged at almost every turn about how to engage in the conversation about race. And so we've had to, instead of looking at the blueprint that your generation could have left us, we've had to build one for ourselves. And I think that both of us agree that that's something that we disagree, that we regret.
So, can I let somebody else from that same
let me say this just one. So, what I'll say is that there's no success without a successor. In our generation, this movement is literally, we missed the generation. In a lot of parts, we missed 2 generations. My parents just turned 40, right? So what happened after the civil rights movement, like they attacked Dr. King, they pushed this narrative of Dr. King was for peace and equality and turn the other cheek. And then they killed him when he started talking about, wait a minute, I made a mistake. And so when he started talking about independence from white supremacy and from white America, then we got complacent. So they pushed this narrative so that we became complacent. But then we also have to remember that during the 80s, when our parents were born, it was the crack babies, right? It was the crack generation, so they fed it to us. We were on the right pathway to independence and to building independent black institutions, but then they put drugs and drugged us and changed our mindsets. So we just getting back on track. We literally, just as a people in a generation that was already 400 years behind, we just getting detoxed.
Let me speak for Let me try to speak for another part of that generation. We cannot afford to have a circular firing squad where we can get around and start shooting at one another. Because I don't think there's anybody in this room, in this setting, who's our enemy, per se, regardless of color. I'm very happy to see, in a kind of a perverse way, what happened with Faron Manuel and others. Because we've always somehow had a delusion of inclusion for a long period of time. And that was a delusion. But let me just also make a case for my generation, if I might. Historically, if you are French, you know your French history. If you're German, you know your German history. If you're Italian, you know Italian history. But if you are African American, your history has been some of the most sordid history in the history of mankind. And therefore, a lot of people who look like me don't want to talk about slavery. They don't want to talk about segregation. They don't want to talk about how they had no rights that the smallest white child was bound to respect. So therefore, parents don't like to give their children bad news, especially African American people. How can you tell your child you were making $5 a day in car fare, working from kin to kin? How can you tell your child, et cetera, all those kind of things? I want to apologize to the young people for not passing the baton per se in that regard, but let me just tell you, as an adult, I don't want to tell my children bad news. If the rent was due, and it was due next week, I'm not going to tell my children, you know what the rent's due next week, I got to get the rent. You go get the rent and pay it, and you don't tell the children the bad news. I think, though, that we've got to do a little bit better job on that. And here's what I mean by that. We've got to thank these white policemen who are shooting these black folks in the back for serving as a catalyst for us to have this kind of conversation. Now, what am I doing personally on this score? We've got to tell our history, because if you don't, what's the word? You will repeat it time and time again. You are living in the most racist country ever known to mankind. Now, a lot of folks don't want to admit that, but that's true if you look at the facts. What are we doing? Let's move beyond talking. The question that this young lady right here raised, or at least not directly, was the same question that was raised with me about 6 or 8 weeks ago at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. And let me tell you what I'm trying to do personally on this. I've just got an agreement where we're going to put together a program for the Atlanta public schools that we're going to take statewide eventually, where we're going to show DVDs, we're going to show the history, we're going to show all this stuff, and also some of the things that we did in order to bring about change. But let me just say to you, we don't have the ideas about how to solve the issue today. You've got to come up here and define what you think you need to do to carry this mantle of freedom forward. I'm 79 years old. My mind is 26 now. I can still talk and think, but I can't run like I used to run. I can't walk like I used to walk, but I'm relying on my children. I'm relying on you, because freedom for us, whether we like it or not, is not a crystal stair. It is a journey, a long distance run, and every generation will have to take that baton when it is put in your hands and run it as far and as fast as you can. Let's give you one example of what I'm talking about. We thought we were free. We took the signs down, all that stuff. Now that was monumental, folks. If you all think that was simple, I got something to sell you right outside of this place, and it's a bridge. We changed the world, yes, but we did not change how some folks in the world felt about us. Therefore, you got to now go back to the drawing board, figure out some kind of way to make this thing different. One example, young people remember, some of them listening up here, the folks who were the oppressors used propaganda to carry forward their racist message. They use the TV and the radio to tell half-truths. You may have seen something called Morning Joe. This guy named Joe, what was his name, Scarborough. When those kids out of Missouri, where his holy hat and got those 2 people fired, he came on TV the next morning, he was livid, talking about how the nerve of those black folks getting those folks fired. And he does that almost every morning. How many of you have challenged him? But the point I'm making to you is simply this. Young folks, wake up, you already are alive and well. We're going to do our best here in Atlanta to make sure that our history is told and that we pass this baton on. But don't get caught up in the circular firing squad. That is counterproductive. It will not work. It's hard work. Final example about this thing about propaganda. The last Friday every month you see the unemployment report, and they say it's coming down, it's 5% now. Well, let's examine that for a moment. Let's don't all praise that, because what does that really mean? What that really means is that if you are white in America, you almost have 0 unemployment. That's what that means. If you're black in America, you're about 15 to 20% unemployed. And Latinos about the same thing. If you're over a certain age, under a certain age, your unemployment is about 30 to 40%. But what does the media do? They show you at 5%. That looks good, it's getting better, but not for us. So you got to look beyond the veneer in order to find out where do we go from here.
Thank you. So, if I may, we've gone over time. This conversation can go on, and I'm sorry we didn't get to the audience, but we are so glad that you are here. Keep these conversations alive. There's a lot of people we didn't hear from, but we need to hear from you, because it starts here. It starts with a group of people who are interested enough to think that we're better than what we're told we are, and that we can work together collectively. I'm going to turn it over to Sheila.
I want to thank everybody for coming out, and I know we didn't have enough time for the dialogue, but I really want to thank MOCA and the Aurielle Board for this project, because a lot of times as an artist, I've taken the position to want to talk about art activism and how we can talk about it through art. And I want to thank the Project in Denton, where I was able to present my protest images out in the street with Flood sign. And one more, make some fine art. And we can continue this conversation, and we have to understand that we're in a critical moment in our history. And we're at a tipping point where we must come together, and we have to deal with these difficult issues. Globally, the world is very chaotic, it's very disruptive. And nobody's comfortable. We keep dreaming, we're not going to work it out.